Welcome to JW Night Talk. I guess that's what we used to call it. exJW Night Talk. Well, for a lot of us, we were JWs at one time, and perhaps there is some JWs online. We don't know, but everyone's welcome on this show. There's no exceptions. Let's say hi to a few people. We have Fire Solars, the old world of Marina. Hello. And we have David. David said hi. We have Tad from Japan. He's going to come on with us here. I put out a link. So, yes, come on, Tad. We'd like to hear your experience on PTSD. That's the subject that we're going to be discussing tonight is PTSD. So, I'd be surprised if we don't all have it. It's we're going to cover it. You guys can decide. But I know I have it. So some of the stuff on PTSD, you know, a lot of us know it. It's about our emotions, our feelings, and our memories. So that's what it's dealing with. And where do we get those from? Well, if you've been in the Watchtower, because it's such a high control group, there might have been things that caused us to have anxiety, you know, maybe an event. So a lot of times the abuse cases, there's so many abuse cases, right? And abuse cases will cause PTSD. Disfellowshipped, if you were ever disfellowshipped, that will cause it. If you were ever in a judicial meeting, three elders ganging up on little you, that may in fact cause it. What was said. So we're going to learn about the causes and what it feels like. We're going to talk about this a lot here tonight. We're going to talk about some ways of helping us, and I think that's the most important. The important part of this whole process is figuring out how we can heal ourselves. It's about healing and moving forward, being survivors, not victims. So the PTSD triggers, you know, I wanted to know about this because we do hear people in the community say, well, that triggers me. No, that triggers me. Well, you know, so much of this stuff triggers everyone. We as an activist might not be able to make videos if we wanted to just satisfy everyone. So there's a lot of triggers. So rather than coming from the standpoint, this triggers me, that triggers me, and then everyone's tiptoeing around you like as if broken glass. You remember that song, Broken Glass? Maybe some of you remember that. But yes, you don't want to be tiptoed around. That doesn't feel good either. So let's learn how to deal with triggers ourselves. We're going to so if we're triggered, this is a personal thing. This is no one else out there. They're not trying to trigger us, but there are triggers. And so if we get triggered, how do we deal with it? And how can we overcome this? So hopefully by tonight, if you stick with me, we will be able to give answers and actually listen to some real therapists, get some real good concrete move forward direction on this. I know it did for me building this video. Now I do have all my lights on, so it's a little dark in here. I'll take my hat off, then it's not as dark, and you'll see my sunburn. Defining a PTSD. Now, everyone knows what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a disorder. It's something that happens. A car accident can cause this. If you're a veteran, a war veteran, can cause this. So a flashback, it calls it an intrusion. So it's almost like an intrusion into your body. So a psychological event during which an individual relives a traumatic incident. So what happens is we start living in the past, and we're not present any longer. or the past intrudes upon us in the present and takes us over. Takes what we start feeling the same. We start, if it's shakes, shivers, whatever, we go through all those same symptoms that we did in the past, and things will trigger it. We're going to talk about that. So, what are weird triggers? Sights, sounds, smells, thoughts. We can be thinking. I'm an overthinker, and so I often, that's probably my thorn in my side. Overthinking things, overanalyzing things. It's my enemy at times, and it's my best friend at times. So what do you do? But if you're an overthinker, it's tough, because you start to overthink things of the past, and once our mind gets on a negative trail, it seems like when we're in that moment, it's all negative. And we'll even defend ourselves and take a situation around us, and we will attack people that are trying to help us with negativity. We might even, with loving ones around us now, because remember, this event was like maybe many years ago, 20, 30. I know for me, my event happened 30 years ago. 30 years ago, half of my life. So when you're 30 years old, you're very susceptible to this. Young soldiers. These 30-year-old soldiers out there. Okay, so sights, sounds, smells, or thoughts that remind you of the traumatic events in some way. I know for me, a TV show. If I'm watching a TV show where someone is cheating on someone, it gets my mind going back. I have to really work not to start thinking about these events that I went through to watch the TV show. And sometimes I have to just get up and walk away. I can't watch that show. So these are some things, traumatic events. Different things can trigger us. So what do we do? If it really triggers us, like I say in a TV show, sometimes I just get up and walk away. If you're really triggered, and how long can you be triggered for? We're going to talk about that. But it can last for a while. It can last for a moment. It says focus on your breathing. And it's a lot of breathing from the research I'm doing here and from what the therapists are saying. So when you're frightened, you might stop breathing normally. So we go into that flight or fight mode. Flight or fight. And when you're frightened, you might hold your breath. Stop breathing. So that's why it says first thing, focus on breathing. Start breathing. Count your breath. We're gonna look at that throughout this show here. Now, carry an object that reminds you of the present. I thought this was interesting. An object that reminds you of the present. Carry it with you. Something from the present. Because if we're going to relive the past event, sometimes having something with us that we know is just from the present is important. So let's say you're married in the present. Let's say in the past you went through a divorce and it caused a traumatic event, and you're married in the present. Having the wedding ring would remind you of your present marriage. You got a good marriage. You got a loyal partner. There's trust. There's communication. You see, that wedding ring would mean that with your current relationship. But sometimes we could relive the past based on a trigger. And everyone's triggers are different. So that's why it says carry an object that reminds you of the present. Tell yourself that you're safe. So talk to yourself. Comfort yourself. Keep a diary and try grounding techniques. And we're going to look at 30 grounding techniques. And I wanted to get right into this before the videos, because this is so important. The 30 grounding techniques. So if this is all you were to watch on this video, it would probably be the most important part of the video. Now I'm going to talk about the grounding techniques. We're going to cover it quickly. I don't really have, I could put it on my green screen, I think. Well, I can put it right up like that. So now, physical grounding techniques. Put your hands in water. Focus on the water's temperature, how it feels on your fingertips, palms, and backs of your hands. Does it feel the same in each part of your hand? Use warm water first, then cold. Next, try cold water first, then warm. Does it feel different to switch from cold to warm water versus warm to cold? So I like that. One of the first things I do in the morning is I wash the dishes. And sometimes my wife tries to wash the dishes, and I say, no, no. I scold her, or I say, don't take my job away. I like washing dishes. I don't know what it is, but as soon as I put my hands in the water, um, I don't know, I'm calm. I feel calm. Sometimes you have to go to the bathroom, but that's another thing. So number 2, pick up or touch items near you. So look around, try to be present. These are all grounding techniques, right? So remember, PTSD is living a past event. So we have to remind our conscious self that, hey, you're no longer there. It's okay. You're in the present. So that's why it says pick up something and focus on it. So number 3 is breathe deeply. We're going to work through this a bit. Savor food or drink. Take small bites, sips of food, beverages. Take a short walk. I used to do that. Walk around the block and get home. It's really good. And if you're walking, and I'm going to put myself on a little bigger screen here, and I did that today. I hadn't done it for a while, but when you're walking, you can get into a rhythm like this. And it's really good because it's like squeezing a ball. You can do that too, squeeze balls. But this is good because it's taking some thought, right? So you start with the rhythm and you do it to your walking. And now then you add in a cantation. What is that? Well, every day and every way I'm feeling better and better, right? So every day and every way I'm feeling better and better. Every day and every way I'm feeling better and better. Every day and every way I'm feeling better and better. That's kind of how it works. And if you walk to it, you're making your own rhythm, you're making your own music. You say it out loud. Pretty soon, if you're walking in a park, you'll have 5 or 6 people walking beside you doing the same thing because it's positive energy. So take a short walk and throw in a bit of that Anthony Robbins stuff. That's where I learned that from. And it does work. Now, number 6, hold a piece of ice. I hadn't heard of that, but how long does it take to start melting and the sensation? Savor a scent, a fragrance that appeals to you. It might be, well, in my case, it'd be coffee. Let's make a coffee and talk about this. That's, but it could be tea or it could be something else. So move your body. Do a few exercises, stretches. We're talking about the walking, jumping jacks, up and down, rope, jogging in place, stretching, different muscle groups. And listen to your surroundings. I'm going to put this back up on the stage. Um, there we go. Listen to your surroundings. Take a few moments. Listen to the noises around you. Feel your body, your hair on your shoulders, your forehead, the weight of your shirt, whether your arms feel loose or stiff, whether your legs are crossed. And try the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. Work backwards from 5. Use your senses. List things you notice around you. For example, you might think of 5 things you hear, 4 things you see, 3 things you can touch from where you're sitting, and 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And that's a good game you can play with your children. It's like the I Spy with my little eye. Do you see the color purple? So the child looks around to see something purple. Maybe there's 2 or 3 purple things, so it's, but similar to that. Mental grouping techniques. Number 12, play a memory game. Look at the detailed photograph picture, 5 to 10 seconds, and turn the photograph face down and create a photograph in your mind in as much detail as possible. So that's interesting. Um, I have my dog beneath me here. She likes to come in and just sit right under my chair. You've seen her at the start of the show. Number 13, her name is Lila. That's her name. She's a guardian dog. She's one of those livestock dogs, and she has two goats outside she keeps care of, but I don't know why she's not out there. It's kind of hot outside, so she's thinking it's cooler in here. So now think in categories. You can do that: musical instruments, ice cream flavors, or baseball teams. That's like chunking it up. Use math and numbers. If you're good with math or you like numbers, running through a times table in your head, counting backwards from 100. I find at nighttime, if I think of three things that I'm grateful for, I usually fall asleep. Three things that you're grateful for. If you're religious, you could talk to God. God, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. Or just three things you're grateful for. Nothing to do with God, really. Perhaps it's your mate. You're really grateful for your mate, your partner, the company you keep, the communication, the love between the two of you. Or perhaps you have a really good friend. You think of all of the attributes of your friend. Or a pet, a dog or a cat or a bird. Perhaps the bird talks to you. We had one, a little budgie. And all of these things are good. And if that doesn't work, I count backwards 9, 8, 7. And you wake up, it's morning. Recite something. Think of a poem, song, or a book passage that you can recite. Make yourself laugh. Laughter is one of the best medicines, if you can do it. It's really hard when you're in an episode, but maybe your partner tries to make you laugh. Laugh. Don't hold it back. You see, sometimes we hold it back. Laugh. Let the laugh out. 17, use an anchoring statement. This might be something like, I'm so and so, and I'm so old. This is where I live, Visualize a daily task you enjoy and you don't mind doing. Laundry, sweeping the floor, I don't know, putting your clothes away, vacuuming. I like washing dishes. Describe a common task. Think of an activity you do often and you do well, such as making coffee, locking up your office, tuning a guitar. Go through the process steps and then give someone else the instructions on how to do it. Now you're completely out of the episode if you can do that. 20, imagine yourself leaving the painful feelings behind. Imagine that. Visualize. What would it be like? Gathering the emotions, balling them up and putting them into a box. Walking, swimming, biking, or jogging away from the painful feelings. And your thoughts as a song or a TV show you dislike, changing the channel or turning down the volume. They're still there, but you don't have to listen to them. So I like that. Turning down the volume in your mind. So we're acknowledging our thoughts. We're acknowledging that something triggered us to remember those thoughts, to make us feel that way again. We can acknowledge it. Okay, I realize that triggered me and got me there. Let's settle this down a bit. Let's knock this down a few notches. So describe what's around you. Spend a few minutes taking in your surroundings and noting what you see with your five senses. The park bench out there is red or green. It's warm under my jeans since I'm in the sun. Feels rough, but there's no splinters. The air smells like smoke, or I hear kids laughing and a dog barking. So soothing grounding techniques. So picture the voice or the face of someone you love. If you feel upset or distressed, visualize someone positive in your life. Imagine their face or think of what their voice sounds like. Imagine them telling you, the moment's tough. You're going to get through this. You know it. Number 23, practice self-kindness. Repeat kind, compassionate phrases to yourself. You're having a rough time, but you'll make it through. Do this to yourself. You're having a rough time, guy, but you're going to make it. You're strong and you can make it through this pain. You're trying hard and you're doing your best. Don't beat yourself up. So you can say it out loud or you can say it in your head as many times as you need it. It's self-affirmation. You're a good person. Love yourself. Number 24, sit with your pet. If you're at home and you have a pet, spend a few moments just sitting with them. If they're a furry variety, pet them. Focus on how their fur feels. Consider their markings or unique characteristics. And if you have a small pet you can hold, concentrate on how they feel in your hand. And if you're not at home, think of your favorite things about your pet or how they would comfort you if you were there. And I know the other day when I had my episode, I laid down. I was tired because it makes you tired. And the cat came in and cuddled up beside me and started purring. And it does something to you. Number 25. List favorites. List 3 favorite things in several different categories. So you might look at favorites, foods, trees, songs, movies, books, places. What's your favorite foods? So just think about it like that. What's your first favorite? And then what's your second? So if you go to a restaurant, what do you always order? Trees. Which trees do you like the best? I like palm trees. Songs. Which songs do you like the best? Movies. Well, everyone can name their favorite movies. And your favorite songs. And your favorite books. And your favorite places. So yes, these are good things to break this trance that we're in from past events, break that, and focus on other things that we like. And this is good for partners, people around us, that are trying to help us. They can help us in this way by knowing how we can help ourselves. Visualize your favorite place. Think of a favorite place, whether it's home of a loved one, a country. Maybe it's a campsite, a holiday. Think of the sense that you've experienced there and try to recall the last time you've been there. I know my wife and I talked about the spa that she's always went to in Vancouver Island, just on the west coast. And she would go through all the smells and the aromas and everything. So it's amazing how we can do that if we pick our favorite place. And plan an activity. So that's good if you're alone or with a friend or a loved one, even online. Let's say we're planning an activity to the protest. That's September 13th, the Be Free protest that's coming up. So we could plan an event with a friend and think of what you'll do and when. Maybe you'll go to dinner. Maybe you'll take a walk on a beach, see a movie that you've been looking forward to, visit a museum. I know at the protest, they all kind of get together for a meal and they go somewhere. I haven't been to a Be Free. We hope to get there next year. Focus on the details as to what you'll wear and when you'll go and how you'll get there. That's excellent. My good wife was really good because when we sat down and started talking, that's exactly what she did. She started planning our work and pulling up the events. Hey, we're going to go here. This is where we're going to go on our next protest. And, this is what's lining up. And so that was really good. It brought me back to the present, because when you're in a PTSD PTSD moment, everything's negative. Even this channel for me is negative. I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. Not going to quit. But when you're in that moment, everything's negative. And you throw things out. You might throw that out just to hurt someone. Just to hurt someone because you're so negative. You want others to hurt too. Maybe. I don't know. But that's what happens. So my good wife, she so lovingly, and we start planning what we're going to do next. And it's good if you have a partner. Touch something comforting. And this could be your favorite blanket, could be a t-shirt, a smooth stone. A lot of people have those rocks, those energy rocks. I think we have a few. My good wife uses them. Maybe I should use them. Something to explore. Never thought of that, actually. Think about how it feels under your fingers or in your hands. And if you have a favorite sweater, scarf, or a pair of socks, put them on and spend a moment thinking about the sensation of the fabric on your skin. And write mentally a list of 4 or 5 things in your life that brings you joy, visualizing them briefly. And listen to music. Number 30, put on your favorite song, but pretend you're listening to it for the first time. And focus on the melody and the lyrics, if there are any. And does the song give you the chills or create any other physical sensations? And pay attention to the parts that stand out the most. So how do grounding techniques work? Well, there's little research explaining how grounding techniques work. The techniques represent a common strategy for managing PTSD and anxiety. And some grounding techniques use tools such as visualization and senses, including sight and hearing. Okay, so we're going to move on to, we looked at some of the symptoms. We all kind of been through this. Where I think we have next here is a video. And this video is 12 signs you might be suffering from complex PTSD. And this is from the School of Life. Thanks to them for putting this out. And we'll, when I build my descriptions on this video, after it's done, I will put a link to all these videos in the description. So if you want to go and see the site and see, they have a lot of other videos, you can. Okay, so here it is. I'll get this up on the screen and we'll run it through.
PTSD stands for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, a condition officially recognized in 1980 to describe exposure to a relatively brief but devastating event, typically a war, a rape, an accident, or a terrorist incident. Complex PTSD, recognized in 1994, describes exposure to something equally devastating, but over a very long time, normally the first 15 years of life. Emotional neglect, humiliation, bullying, disrupted attachment, violence, and anger. A lot of us, as many as 20%, are wandering the world as undiagnosed sufferers of complex PTSD. We know that all isn't well, but we don't have a term to capture the problem. We don't connect up our ailments, and we have no clue who to seek out or what sort of treatment might help. So, here are 12 leading symptoms of complex PTSD. We might think about which ones, if any, apply to us, and more than 7 might be a warning sign worth listening to. Firstly, a feeling that nothing is safe. Wherever we are, we have an apprehension that something awful is about to happen. We are in a state of hypervigilance. The catastrophe we expect often involves a sudden fall from grace. We will be hauled away from current circumstances and humiliated, perhaps put in prison and denied all access to anything kind or positive. We won't necessarily be killed, but to all intents, our life will be over. People may try to reassure us through logic that reality won't ever be that bad, but logic doesn't help. We're in the grip of an illness. We aren't just a bit confused. Secondly, we can never relax. This shows up in our body. We're permanently tense or rigid. We have trouble with being touched, perhaps in particular areas of the body. The idea of doing yoga or meditation or breathing exercises, these things aren't just not appealing, they may be positively revolting. We may call them hippie with a sneer. And deeper down, they are, of course, terrifying. Probably our bowels are troubled too. Our anxiety has a direct link to our digestive system. Thirdly, we can't ever really sleep and we wake up very early, generally in a state of high alarm, as though during rest we've let down our guard and are now in even greater danger than usual. Fourthly, we have deep in ourselves an appalling self image. We hate who we are. We think we're ugly, monstrous, repulsive. We think we're awful, possibly the most awful person in the world. Our sexuality is especially perturbed. We feel predatory, sickening, shameful. Fifthly, we're often drawn to highly unavailable people. We tell ourselves we hate needy people, but what we really hate are people who might be too available for us. We make a beeline for people who are disengaged, won't want warmth from us, and who might be struggling with their own undiagnosed issues around avoidance. Sixthly, we are sickened by people who want to be cozy with us. We call these people puppyish, revolting, or desperate. Seventh, we are prone to losing our temper very badly, sometimes with other people, more often just with ourselves. We aren't so much angry as very, very worried, worried that everything is about to become very awful again. We are shouting because we're terrified. We look mean. We are, in fact, defenseless. Eighth, we are highly paranoid. It's not that we expect other people will poison us or follow us down the street. We just suspect that other people will be hostile to us and will be looking out for opportunities to crush and humiliate us. We can be mesmerically drawn to examples of this happening on social media, the unkindest and most arbitrary environment which anyone with complex PTSD easily confuses with the whole world, chiefly because it operates like their world, randomly and very meanly. Ninth, we find other people so dangerous and worrying that being alone has huge attractions. We might like to go and live under a rock forever. In some moods, we associate bliss with not having to see anyone again, ever. 10th, we don't register to ourselves as suicidal, but the truth is that we find living so exhausting and often so unpleasant, we do sometimes long not to have to exist anymore. 11. We can't afford to show much spontaneity. We're rigid about our routines. Everything may need to be exactly so as an attempt to ward off looming chaos. We may clean a lot. Sudden changes of plan can feel indistinguishable from the ultimate downfall we dread. 12. In a bid to try to find safety, we may throw ourselves into work, amassing money, fame, honor, prestige. But of course, this never works. The sense of danger and self-disgust is coming from so deep within, we can never reach a sense of safety externally. A million people can be cheering, but one jeer will be enough once again to evoke the self-disgust we have left unaddressed inside. Breaks from work can feel especially worrying. Retirement and holidays create unique difficulties. Those are the symptoms. So, what is the cure for all these arduous symptoms of complex PTSD? Partly, we need to courageously realize that we have come through something terrible that we haven't until now properly digested, because we haven't had a kind, stable environment in which to do so. We are a little wonky because long ago the situation was genuinely awful. When we were small, someone made us feel extremely unsafe, even though they might have been our parent. We were made to think that nothing about who we were was acceptable. In the name of being brave, we had to endure some very difficult separations, perhaps repeated over years. No one reassured us of our worth. We were judged with intolerable harshness. The damage may have been very obvious, but more typically, it might have unfolded in objectively innocent circumstances. A casual visitor might never have noticed. There might have been a narrative, which lingers still, that we were part of a happy family. One of the great discoveries of researchers in complex PTSD is that emotional neglect within outwardly high achieving families can be as damaging as active violence in obviously deprived ones. If any of this rings bells, we should stop being brave. We should allow ourselves to feel compassion for who we were. That might not be easy, given how hard we tend to be with ourselves. The next step is to try to identify a therapist or counselor trained in how to handle complex PTSD. That may well be someone trained specifically in dealing with trauma, which involves directing enormous amounts of compassion towards one's younger self, in order to have the courage to face the trauma and recognize its impact on one's life. Rather touchingly and simply, the root cause of complex PTSD is an absence of love, and the cure for it follows the same path. We need to relearn to love someone we very unfairly hate beyond measure, ourselves.
The School of Life offers online psychotherapy to people all around the world.
Sorry about that. They offer online therapy all over the world. That's what they say. So perhaps you were able to, like me, agree with a few of those points. You know, he ran through quite a few of them, so it helps us to understand where we are and what bothers us. So you can always go back and rewatch this stuff. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about religious trauma syndrome. What is religious trauma syndrome? It's classified as a set of symptoms ranging in severity experienced by those who have participated in or left behind authoritarian, dogmatic, and controlling religious and belief groups like the Watchtower. So all of us came out of the Watchtower, or a few of us have online, and we know how controlling it is. Controlling to the point of they stand in the hospital. They have an HLC member, and I had a couple of situations where they were in there standing watching to make sure that if you needed blood, that you were willing to die and refuse medical treatment that could save your life. That's what that's all about. So very high control. They disfellowship you for everything. Now, disfellowshipping you, they make it look like, wow, you did something very wrong. They disfellowship you. Well, if you didn't do anything wrong and you just walk away, they disassociate you. It's the same penalty. Now they're trying to change all this right now. They're trying to make it lighter. They're trying to use different words to make it look different, because they are flagged in the world for these words disfellowshipping very negatively. So they're trying to change words now. They're trying to use like membership. You lose your membership, or you quit your membership. You're going to be treated the same. You're going to be disfellowshipped. It's just a relabeling. When someone quits the membership, you treat them like a disassociated person, never talk to them again. They're probably influenced by the devil. That's what they told everyone about me. So it's the same. It's the same. It's worse. You just walked away. And then they demonize you. has to stop. These things have to stop. That's another discussion. So how long does this trauma last? Well, as long as the disfellowshipping lasts forever. It lasts forever. The negative effects. Every time you think of your relative, you almost have a PTSD moment. You can't talk to them. You were shunned for no good reason. Your families are split up, whatever. You lost all your friends. So there's ways of moving beyond this, but this is what triggers religions do. This is religious trauma. The negative effect of it persists for years or even decades. And religious trauma is worse. It's worse because the person is looking at this as trauma from God. This is like God punishment or damnation from God. Religious trauma. So what can you do? Well, they say there's cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and cognitive processing therapy, CPT. We're going to look at both of those in a little bit. But first of all, let's take a look at religious trauma. 7 ways religion traumatizes people. We're going to put that on. But first of all, I'm going to put Tad on from Japan. Hello, Tad. How are you doing? In a little bit.
Thank you, Van. Hello.
Yes, thanks for being with us.
I was surprised to learn that Van and I are the same age. It's interesting to hear stories from people who have been on the same journey in countries separated by oceans. Today,
Yes.
we talked about PTSD. I also suffered from obsessive compulsive
Complex,
compulsive
complex, or compulsive. Okay, compulsive disorder.
compulsive
Okay.
disorder, especially mysophobia. When I returned to the organization, especially when I was in my 40s, now there is no trace of it, and I am not affected by that illness at all.
Okay.
Mysophobia is common among the missionaries who are currently receiving care at the Ebina Bethel branch, Japan. They literally wash their hands over and over all day long. That is, first of all, they are afraid of blood. They are afraid that even a drop or a grain of blood will get into their body. If that happens, they think they have sinned, and they are very anxious. Uh, well,
Yeah,
my dad, yeah,
that's a good
and
point. I never thought of that. Blood. So now, as a Jehovah's Witness, it's we were traumatized into believing that blood was evil. Well,
yeah,
not that blood was evil, but blood had to go to the ground. You could not do a blood transfusion, or you were sinning against Jehovah.
yeah,
That's what we were taught. So then now we have this PTSD
exactly.
kind of a thing, this complex when it comes to blood medical treatments with blood now even coming out, right? That kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I
and
didn't think of that.
and and I said one more. Okay,
Hmm.
my dad never followed that rules. Even during my excommunication, I
Hmm.
went to see him and my mom once or twice a month. They talked to me, but it was interesting. It's funny. When I went there, my dad went to the kitchen to get a Scotch whiskey, and 2 glasses and casually put a glass in front of me. My dad said, "Well, drink it." My mom immediately, immediately, immediately sorry,
No, no, that's good. So your dad,
immediately.
okay.
Okay. Wait, wait,
So,
wait.
so I just want to know the story. Your dad puts whiskey in front of you and says, "Drink it."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you drink it?
Yes,
Did you?
yeah. Uh,
Did it cause you? How old were you
how old are you? Me?
when your dad did that to you? How old were you as a young boy?
Uh, yeah, I guess maybe 30 or 40, 40s,
13 or
30s,
14. Okay.
40s. Yes.
Okay.
And my mom uh, mm, immediately made a meal for me and put it in front of me where eat it. They wanted to make it look like they were following the law in their own way. In other words, they took the stance that they had minimal contact as a family, but they didn't eat together. However, my dad, my mom, and I were close, and we talked normally. We listened to jazz together, discussed it. Even
Hmm.
so, I suffered from obsessive and compulsive disorder for a while after returning in my 40s.
Hmm.
It got worse the moment I returned to Watchtower. I thought about it when I was 56 years old. I returned once, but I could not end my life with this organization. I decided that I should uh, quit now because I'm already 56 years old, and I was happily this this fellowship for the second time 5 years ago. Uh, Apostasy. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for giving your experience, Tad, and to be disfellowshipped twice, like all of these things. And I know one other time on the show you were telling us about how your mom used to beat you. She had a stick on the wall or something, and she like beat you for 30 minutes straight. Like that in itself would cause a person to have complex disorders. So we're going to look at this a little bit further here. Oops, put it back on the stage. Religious trauma, and again, this is 7 ways a religion traumatizes you. Now, if you're going to church, she'll say right at the end, just in advance. If you find a good church, stick with it. And there are good churches out there. I'm going to say that too. There's a lot of people in our community that have talked about attending some good churches. So she's going to talk about the watchtowers of the world, basically, but she doesn't say any names. And I know she's talking about Mormons a lot, but it seems like Watchtower and Mormons have a lot in common. So let's let this run, and it's not that long. It's 13
2018
minutes.
and 2019, 2/3 of American adults identify with some religious faith. Many people find within their faith a sense of identity, community, and a deeper connection to purpose or a higher power. But along with the benefits of any faith system come the dangers of experiencing spiritual abuse or religious trauma. Any structure or community provides opportunity for power dynamics or abuse. But when we throw faith into the mix, everything gets an added layer of complication. Because our faith can be such a key part of our identity, when we are controlled by narratives that are dehumanizing or shame-based within a religious system, we can experience deep trauma. It's one thing when your boss tells you you're a failure. It's another thing when someone claiming to speak for God tells you something similar. My goal with this video isn't to demonize religion or in any way say that religion is bad. I was raised in church and was active in my youth group and even went on various mission trips. I always felt that church gave me a good foundation to grow. And in some ways, it kept me safe. I also know people whose faith has informed their identity in a positive and empowering way. As an adult, I stepped away from organized religion because a lot of the spaces that I encountered seemed controlling and judgmental. And while that's not true for every church or religious community, it is true that the power that comes from religion has the potential to really shape us, for better or for worse. So let's jump into the 7 ways religion can be traumatizing and evaluate how we can identify when a religious space or community is a healthy fit. Number 7, any system that requires conformity in beliefs in order to belong and doesn't make space for disagreements or questions can result in trauma. In many unhealthy religious communities, independent thinking isn't supported. People can be taught that they must agree with what they've been told by their church leaders. And the consequences for disagreeing can feel really intense. One member of our community shared with me, quote, "We are taught that there is only one right way, and anyone who says or teaches contrary to that is essentially the devil trying to lure you away from God. My experience was that the church capitalized on fear and shame to keep people drawn in. It's powerful and so damaging." Number 6, beware of any faith community that motivates with fear. If you don't repent, you go to hell. If you don't remain abstinent, you will never find a spouse. And if you don't keep up with your prayer, repentance, purity, or whatever, and the rapture happens, well, then you're left behind with all the other sinners. I was even told as a child that tithing was what God called us all to do. And if we didn't have enough to even pay our bills, we were still supposed to tithe 10% of our earnings. If we didn't, God's message wouldn't get out and other bad things would happen, and we weren't supporting him. And even as a young child around 11 or 12, I felt pressure from my Sunday school teacher to give the church 10% of my allowance. So I gave it every few weeks, every time I got allowance, not because I wanted to, but because I thought that if I didn't, something bad was going to happen. And even as I think about this, I was also pressured to make a purity pledge in a youth group to keep myself, quote unquote, pure before marriage. And they even asked the entire group of guys, so we're all in our youth group, they asked all the boys if they wanted to marry a virgin. And they all, of course, raised their hands. And then the youth leader said something to the effect that we would never find a husband if we didn't remain pure. Like, look at all their hands raised. I can't even believe I hadn't thought of this, and I never realized just how sexist that was. And also, who said any of us wanted to get married, right? It was, ugh. Anyways, let's move on. I also want to mention that when we talk about religious trauma, a term that is often used to describe our symptoms is religious trauma syndrome, or RTS. And in my deep dive into this subject, I found that not everyone agrees with this term, but I want to describe it here in case it resonates with you. To give more symptoms and detail to what RTS is, I'm going to quote Marlene Winnell, and I might be saying her last name wrong, I'm sorry, but she's the person who coined the term. And she states that RTS is the condition experienced by people who are struggling with leaving an authoritarian, dogmatic religion and coping with the damage of indoctrination. They may be going through the shattering of a personally meaningful faith and or breaking away from a controlling community and lifestyle. Now, I believe that RTS is in many ways similar to complex PTSD because Marlene shared that RTS can come with negative beliefs about ourselves and struggles making decisions. She talks about having issues with emotion regulation, depression, and difficulties in our relationships. All of these symptoms can also occur in CPTSD. The only difference is that RTS is in direct connection with our experiences within our religious beliefs. And because our religion can have its hold on our belief system completely, our self-image, community, not to mention our way of thinking, I can see why it may be helpful for this type of trauma to have its own syndrome, not to mention its own treatment. And I will dig into that more in a bit. Number 5, if a religion trains us to not trust our body, thoughts, or any urge or need that we have because it may go against what the Lord or church thinks is right for us, that can lead to some serious trauma. And a huge example of this is how many churches still aren't accepting of our LGBTQ plus community, saying that their love is in some way a sin or it goes against what God wants. I mean, there are still places in our world that do conversion therapy. And here is one such example from a member of our community. She says, quote, "I've realized over the last year or so that I'm bisexual. However, due to my family being Christians and most of my friends too, I've only recently left church and all my friends were from there, I haven't come out or told many people out of fear of being rejected and cut off from my friends and family." And here's a question that I recently received on the podcast. This person states, "Katie, can you please talk about sexuality and how that can affect someone's mental health? I grew up in a strict religion that views homosexuality as a sin. I left the religion when I realized that I'm a lesbian, but sometimes it's still hard for me to accept." When an organization tells us that who we are and who we love isn't acceptable, that can definitely be traumatizing. But add to that faith and spirituality, now you've got a situation where you conflate what you were being told by leaders as what you were being told by God. And if you're a person of faith, that can impact you on such a deep level. I've had many friends growing up who didn't feel safe coming out until they moved away and didn't go to their church anymore. I even had a friend who was shunned by his Mormon family because he came out as gay. It's so incredibly sad and definitely traumatizing. Number 4, any church or organization that prevents us from getting help, saying that we shouldn't need any outside support and that God will give us all the support we need, is not a healthy space to be in. In fact, I went to school with a few Christian scientists who don't believe in modern medicine, and they wouldn't let their kids go to the doctor for anything. They believed that if they prayed enough about it, they would be healed. And you could easily call that child abuse. Because if a child is really ill and the parents refuse to take them to the hospital and they die, well, then what? And it doesn't even begin to touch on the mental health issues and the struggle it can be for our illnesses to be accepted and understood. And here's one such example from our community. When telling people about my childhood sexual abuse, I was told to just pray more and I would be fine, or that God doesn't give you more than you can handle, so it'll be okay. Also, they discouraged me from seeing a psychologist because God is the only one that can fix it. I have even heard personally from members of our community that they were told that their depression or other mental illness was just the devil trying to pry his way into our life. What about dopamine and serotonin levels, or the fact that things maybe haven't been going so well for us? What about that? And oh my God, I hate, I know hate's a strong word, but I'll use it here. I hate when people say, God never gives you more than you can handle. It feels so dismissive, and like minimizing or invalidating. Ugh, I just hate it. Number 3, religious trauma can take place when belonging is conditional on belief. When a community requires you to share beliefs or you lose your family and friends, it becomes really hard for it to be healthy. One of the amazing things about being involved in church is the community, or as many call it, our church family. That connection and support can be life-changing and so needed, especially now. But if we don't agree with everything they preach or have questions about something in the sermon, that beloved community can be immediately cut off. It's almost like they're controlling us by withholding love, that if we don't agree with everything, then we don't get to be around them anymore. Here's a story from another member of our community. They said, if I ever had questions about Christianity of any form, I got judged for asking and never felt like I could ask any questions. It was always believe exactly what the church does or leave. And I actually got in trouble with pastors once for questioning things as I've been trying to work out my identity. We should feel free to question, do our own research, ask the thoughts of others around us, and come to our own conclusions about things. Any group that doesn't allow for that and even threatens to push us out or cut us off from them if we don't just go along and agree can be indirectly damaging our mental health. Not to mention, it can be incredibly traumatic. Number 2, brainwashing and religious indoctrination aren't going to result in health. And I know I've touched on this throughout the video, but it's important that we all understand that telling someone there's only one way to think and to feel, and if they don't agree or go along, we can threaten to withhold love or even use the belief system against them. For example, the church can tell us that our issues or any of the questions that we have just show how much of a hold the devil has on our lives. I've been in churches who did this. And then after saying that, like the devil has such a hold, then they would ask for more from the person who had asked the questions, because in order for them to cleanse themselves of their sinful thoughts, they needed to volunteer at the church more or spend more time in prayer or whatever, you name it, any way to do more to earn it back. And the push to earn this love from God and the church isn't healthy. And for many, obviously, it can be traumatizing. And finally, number 1, religion isn't universally traumatizing or harmful. There are many instances in which it can offer the support, guidance, and care that we're looking for. And many churches and religions support independence and challenge the way things have, quote unquote, always been. We just have to take our time, get to know the people at that church, and really listen to what's being preached and done within that religious community. And then decide if it's a good fit for us. And if it's not working out, or we're feeling pressured into beliefs or actions that we don't think are right, it's entirely okay to take some time and space from the church to reevaluate. And if we decide leaving is best, just know that it can be messy and difficult to tease out what parts are things that we want and what parts would we prefer to leave behind. So be compassionate with yourself as you figure it out. But remember that you don't have to leave your identity, your thoughts, or your faith in God behind. You may just have to find a healthier way to incorporate your faith and spirituality into your life. Because it is possible to keep what was good and at the same time, detangle it from the unhealthy parts. I hope this video was helpful. There is so much more to talk about, but I hope this was validating and informative. And if you want to share any of your own thoughts or experiences with religious trauma, please feel free to leave that in the comments below.
Well, thank you to that lady, whoever made the video. I'll pin it in the descriptions. Katie Morton. She made this video November 1st, 2021. She did a fine job. Really summed it up, I thought, because I could agree with her on a lot of it. Like, I don't know what religions, it sounded like she said Mormons quite a bit, or a couple of times. But I guess a lot of the religions have the same problems that we're experiencing out of the JW religion. Yeah, she did say the Mormons. That one guy identified as gay, and the family shunned him. The same would happen in the Jehovah's Witness religion. You'd be shunned. So yeah, it's interesting. Now, I hope that's helped you a bit. We're gonna move on because I got a lot of information here. We're gonna talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. We're gonna talk about some therapies. What is this? This is the next one. And I hate to put you into another video, but I'm not a therapist, and this is from Psych Hub. These are done by professionals. And this is only a 3-minute video, 4-minute video. It may have some answers for you. Now, what is cognitive behavioral therapy? Cognitive behavioral therapy. What is it? It's exposing yourself to situations that cause anxiety, like going into a crowded public space. So skydiving. No, don't do that. Insurance company won't cover you. Yeah, okay, going out of the box then. So what this is what I'm seeing is going outside of your box that you live in, what your comfort zone. Go outside the comfort zone. That's what I did. I always tell people the experience. I went country dancing after I left the JW religion, and that's where I met my good wife. Country dancing, believe it or not. And she doesn't even like really country music, but her friends did. Her two best friends did. They bought tickets and she went with them. That's what girls do. Three girls go. So what did I do? Well, I'm a JW. I just quit. Just walked out the Kingdom Mall. I was depressed, and my uncle says, "Go country dancing." So I did. My brother came with me actually, and so I wasn't alone. My worldly brother, because I didn't have any JW brothers, and so I went country dancing. And I didn't know what to do, so I've never ever been in a situation where I was divorced at the time, and I was lonely, depressed. This was out of the box for me. So I went up and talked to the people that orchestrated the event. And I said to him, I says, like, I do like country dancing. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of people dancing, but I'd be a volunteer. So they said, sure, you can be a volunteer. So I became a volunteer dancer. And so they have rules, you kind of got to go up and down the aisles and ask ladies if they want to dance. And then you escort them over to the dance floor. It's a country festival. There's about 2,000 people there. So it was quite the event. So we have to get outside the box sometimes. That's what this is perhaps talking about. I did watch it earlier, but I watched a lot of things. So let's take a look at this together and let's see what it says.
I'm so lonely. I feel down about it, but I'm afraid to meet new people because of what they'll think of me.
I've been having panic attacks. They come out of nowhere, and now I'm getting more anxious about having them.
Visiting my family is so stressful. I get angry, and then I just crash when I get home.
Everyone else has everything together. Why am I the only one that struggles? I'm just so stupid.
These are the voices of depression and anxiety.
I know. I struggled with both, and it affected my husband as well as me.
I know. I have anxiety.
I know. I've had depression.
About 1 out of every 5 people experiences a mental health problem at least once each year, and depression and anxiety are the most common. Many people are familiar with what it feels like to be sad or blue, or very worried about something. For some people, those feelings are big enough that they become hard to manage without some help. Depression, anxiety, and other mental health problems can be treated, and most of the time, they can be treated very well. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is an evidence-based treatment. That means it's been proven to be effective more often than most other types of therapy. It's pretty simple, really. What we think and what we do can influence how we feel. For instance, if you have a relationship breakup and think, nobody will ever love me again, you might be less likely to go out and meet new people. And over time, you may get isolated and lonely. That pattern can lead to depression and hopelessness. So in CBT, we can practice new ways of thinking. Trained therapists teach us to change our thoughts. We would work to say something like, I'm really sad that relationship didn't work out, but I still have friends and may meet someone else in time. This kind of thinking can lead to taking simple steps, like inviting a friend out for coffee, getting involved in a group that shares a hobby or activity you enjoy, or starting a conversation with someone new. After a while, with enough practice both thinking and doing, people can start to feel better and worry less. CBT helps people with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, hard relationships, and many other problems. It's typically used by mental health professionals in therapy, individually, or with groups of people. There are also lots of books available that help people work on their thinking and the thing to do that helps them start to feel better, no matter what the problem.
Sometimes relationships are hard, but we learned better ways to talk to each other, and we're having fun again.
Sometimes I still feel stress and I get worried, but it makes so much more sense to me now. I know what to do to get through it.
My depression is a lot better. I still have to practice some things, but I feel like myself again.
Depression, anxiety, and other problems don't have to last a lifetime. Cognitive behavioral therapy can help someone work through a problem pretty quickly. People can change their thinking, change their actions, and change their lives.
Okay, so that's cognitive behavioral therapy. So sometimes we just, if we're depressed, if we're at home, if we can get out, try something out of the box. Okay, we're going to move on. Cognitive behavior therapy work. How does it work? This is another short video. Let's see, it's 5 minutes. I'll put it on the stage. Here we go.
You just broke up with your partner. You had an argument with your best friend. You got let go from your job. A loved one gets sick. At some point in everyone's life, they may feel sad or gloomy. For most people, it's a fleeting feeling like a passing storm. Eventually, the rain clouds clear, the sadness fades away. For me, though, the sadness didn't go away. It went on for weeks. I felt awful and I didn't know what to do. My symptoms felt like I was being knocked down over and over again. I felt hopeless. I lost interest in things I normally enjoyed, and I really didn't have much of an appetite anymore. I finally talked to my doctor and he encouraged me to see a mental health professional, like a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist talked to me about my symptoms, how long they had been going on, and how they were impacting my life. She ended up prescribing me medication to help with my symptoms and talked about the potential side effects. She also explained that it's important to approach treatment for mental illness using a wide variety of tools and resources. So in addition to my medication treatment, I also started meeting with a therapist. My therapist introduced me to cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. CBT is another treatment option for people with mental illness. CBT is an evidence-based treatment, which means it is based on scientific research and clinical expertise. CBT focuses on relationship between thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and behaviors. Negative or inaccurate thoughts are challenged and restated in logical, positive terms. When my psychiatrist explained my diagnosis, I felt hopeless, like I couldn't find a solution to help put the pieces of my life back together. As I continued to learn about cognitive behavioral therapy, it became clear that I was having a lot of negative and irrational thoughts that did not match up to facts. I would say things such as, "My boss hates me. She's always giving me more work. I'll never get that raise. I'd like to hang out with my friends, but I'll just bum everyone out. I don't want them to get mad at me." I used to see things as one big mess. I'd look at my house and get overwhelmed. I'd say to myself, "I'm such a slob, I can't handle this." I was quick to call myself names, believe the worst of myself, and downplay any positive parts of my life. I'd get discouraged and avoid dealing with my problems. Cognitive behavioral therapy helped me learn how to rethink and reevaluate how I saw the world. CBT taught me how my negative thoughts would team up with strong emotions and shut me down to further depress me. I can see clearly now that I was regularly interpreting most things in my life in a very negative manner. By learning to recognize extreme negative thinking, I was able to change my thoughts into positive statements such as, My boss gives me the important tasks because she believes in me. I know I can handle things. Taking this approach gave me the confidence to talk to my boss about getting a raise. We had a great discussion, and she told me the steps I could take to advance my career. Little by little, my therapist helped me realize the unproductive thoughts and behaviors I was creating. CBT also refocused me towards problem-solving techniques. I began facing my fears using positive reinforcement techniques, and in time, I started to calm myself on my own. They're my friends. They love me. Being myself is all they've ever wanted. Cognitive behavioral therapy helped me learn how to stop attacking myself and instead think more productively. By changing my thoughts and setting logical goals, things started to get easier to manage. I learned to see things as individual parts that I dealt with one at a time. Just start with the clothes, and when that's done, move on to the dishes. Just a little at a time and you'll get it done. By taking ownership of my feelings and thoughts, my behaviors changed for the better. At times, I didn't think my symptoms would get better, but I kept going. I fought back. I stopped allowing myself to use negative thinking about myself to go unchecked. I've taken a fearless inventory of myself, and through hard work, I've been clearer in my thoughts and feelings. I'm proud to say that I am on the road to taking my life back. The cognitive behavioral therapy skills I learned, along with my medication, have helped me to put the pieces together. It's not always easy, but I now know that I can take the steps to handle problems when they come along. By learning more about CBT and how it can help me, I feel more put together and healthy. That's something to feel good about.
Okay, that's the end of that. Okay, so how does that therapy work? Well, it's it's being around people. Let's think of the Discord community we have. If I'm just going to move this off the screen on the Discord community, and someone put the link up. I think Alora. Thanks to Alora. I kind of flashed it there for a bit, but the Discord link. There's a link. I'll just find it here. There it is. Yeah. So this is the Discord link, and you can see a lot of creators are online. Ruby's on there. But what I want to talk about this Discord community is after I had my incident the other day, I was kind of mellowing out. The next day I was taking it easy, and I played poker all afternoon the next day. All afternoon. I just relaxed. And I invited a bunch of people on, and next thing I knew, it was 5 o'clock. Never done that before. And sometimes we have to do that. It changed. Oh, I know what was happening. There was a little conversation about politics that got a little heated, but they shouldn't. We should be able to talk about anything with each other and not get offended. But if we're getting offended, this might be a trigger. So then we go through the grounding techniques. It's our issue. There's lots of things that triggered me. And as we go through the stages of waking up, the triggers will get less and less. I was triggered away at the beginning over the word apostate. Don't call me an apostate. I'm not an apostate. What am I? I remember I was having that discussion about 2 years ago with my wife. And she said, have you ever thought of, you being an apostate? She didn't say it like that, but she probably whispered it. And I got up and walked out. I'm not going to be an apostate. That's those guys online that are apostates. That was before, we're kind of at that stage where we're just checking the online stuff out. And I was watching a few of the apostate videos. And I remember watching Lloyd Evans, and some of his stuff was okay, but he brought on this atheist guy, and I couldn't stomach it. I got upset. But now it doesn't bother me. I watch all kinds of shows because I want to stretch my mind, and I'm open-minded. But that's how I was 2 years ago. So as we progress, as we wake up, that's what we call it. Or maybe we're actually treating our PTSD. We're not so wound tight about things. Can we accept gay, lesbian? Can we accept that? People. We're all people. We all bleed the same. We all breathe the same air. What happens in our sexuality is no one's business. This is Watchtower's fault for making sexuality everyone's business. It's no one's business. So can we accept that? Are we okay? As time goes on, we will be okay. Now, cognitive processing therapy is another one. It's good to go through this because I didn't know about all this. And it's a 12-session psychotherapy for PTSD. Teaches you how to evaluate and change upsetting thoughts you have. So this is good. This might be something we can do on our own. Let's look at that. I think I got a video on that. Not another video, Vern. Well, I'm not a professional. So again, I'm perhaps like you. Hopefully you don't have what I have, but I have this problem. And now that I'm more aware of it, I see that it flares up every once in a while. And I now see why. And so I was able to have a good discussion with my good wife, and all is smooth. And that's what it's about. So if we have no one to talk to, get on the Discord. There's a venting channel. Just start venting, and someone will come on and talk to you. And then every Sunday morning, and I've been wanting to get on one of these, but we have counseling classes. There's some ladies that are doing counseling, qualified, very qualified, and they're going through the religious trauma workbooks. They're helping us, and that's all free of charge. There's no charge to any of this. We're just here as a community, and we want someone to play poker with on Discord. It's really fun. There's a lot of games. They're playing mini golf. There's probably 7 or 8 different games. So as we go on, we'll try them. Okay, well, let's look at this. This is going to cost 2 minutes of your life. Here we go. I'm going to move this.
The main way in which CPT works is to look at the way people have made sense of the traumatic event. And there are some ways in which you've made sense of it that can keep you stuck in the trauma memories, and they keep occurring because you haven't really developed a story that you can live with. And that's the main way in which CPT works. And so in that, the spirit of figuring out the way that you made sense of it, early on there's a focus on the therapist asking more questions, hearing about the event, either by virtue of the patient writing a trauma account or the therapist asking curious questions about what happened. And early on, that's the therapist's job more. And then as the therapy progresses, there are sessions that are really designed to teach the client how to become their own therapist so that they can use the skills to continue to unravel those stuck points or ways of thinking that have led to them not recovering from the traumatic event, and then to be able to apply that in their day-to-day life.
The therapist's job is not to instill our beliefs on the client. So what I more think is a better way to look at that process is the client almost going to like a court of thought in a way, where they have a prosecutor and they have a defense in their own head. And you're looking at evidence, and in your own head, you're learning to look at it from multiple ways. So you take the same evidence, you write it down. They do a lot of detailed journaling. They actually write a trauma story. They write a trauma impact. And in doing those accounts, then they go back and they look at it from multiple viewpoints. The prosecutor's telling you, you're right, the world's bad, the world's dangerous, you should believe that. The defense attorney saying, wait a minute, you forgot these nice people over here and that person at the store who helped you out when your baby was sick. And, you know, and so that evidence back and forth starts to get you to have a more balanced view.
Okay, so I can relate to that, writing it down. My good wife must have been a therapist. I came in one cold day in December, angry, really angry at the Watchtower. And it wasn't the Watchtower's fault. My tractor wouldn't move at the gate, but somehow in my mind, I blamed it on the Watchtower. Because I had this old tractor and they put me in a position, blah, blah, blah. I donated, gave everything to the Watchtower. And all I can afford is this old piece of junk that I can't use in the winter. And that's all I thought about. I was walking up the driveway. I was thinking about this. And my good wife reads me. I didn't have to say a thing. She could read it all over my face. So we ended up talking. And that night I started writing it down, writing it all out. It's writing therapy. And it's really good for us if we can write it down. We don't have to publish it. It might not be worth publishing. The stuff I wrote wasn't. But it was good to write it down. It was therapy. And it did actually lead to a published novel. And that was my first novel. The other books were novelettes that I wrote, smaller books. But the first novel, almost 300 pages. It had a whole big story in it. It has it. To Heaven and Back in one night. So we've ran parts of it on the channel. So I was going to comment. I wanted to make a comment to San Diego Pimo. San Diego Pimo. What did he say up here? We're talking about when I met my good wife and so on and so forth. And San Diego Pimo nailed it. Where is he? All the way up here. We're all the way up here. I want to see what he said. I was going to comment earlier. A lot of comments tonight. Thank you guys for all the comments. It's great. Live chat. Okay, San Diego Pimo. Can't find it. He talked about a country and western group. And that was, I think, the song, almost the song that we used at our wedding. My good wife and I used it at the wedding. It was it was Josh Turner. And the song is Will You Go With Me? Josh Turner, Will You Go With Me? So San Diego Pimo nailed it when I was talking about that story. That was our theme song at our wedding. And it's amazing how that stuff goes. Okay, we're almost done the show. We're stay with me. There's just a few more topics. This one here is processing therapy, cognitive processing therapy. It's only 2 minutes of your life. Let's just take a quick look at this and see what this says. I looked at them all today, and they're all just a blend. So this is like my third time through.
Other people have been through worse.
I should be over this by now.
It's my fault that it happened. I shouldn't have been there in the first place.
I'll never trust anyone again. Never.
Sometimes people experience something so awful we call it traumatic. When something happens that's so big, so dangerous, so scary, well, it can really affect the way we live our lives and the decisions we make. It can last a long time, and sometimes it gets stuck in place. When this happens, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. But PTSD is a condition that can be treated. There are a few types of therapies that work especially well, and cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, is one of them. CPT is an evidence-based treatment, which means it's been proven to be effective more often than most other types of therapy. During CPT, people learn to notice how trauma has changed their lives, especially how it changes their thoughts about themselves, other people, and the world around them. For example, it's pretty common for someone who's experienced a traumatic event to think things like, I shouldn't have been there, no place is safe, or I should be over it by now. These thoughts can bring up fear, sadness, or anger, sometimes to the point where people start to drink, use drugs, or avoid other people or situations in life. In CPT, people notice these thoughts, take a look at whether they're true, and consider other ways to think. So, I shouldn't have been there might turn into, I really didn't know it was going to happen, and I made the best decision I could at the time. Or, I'm not safe might become, You know, some things in the world aren't safe, but lots of people and places are. These are examples of how thinking really influences how we feel, and that we can consider and change the way we think about hard things that happen in our lives. The best news is that cognitive processing therapy doesn't take that long. It's a treatment that typically takes about 3 months of weekly therapy. Sometimes it works more quickly, and sometimes it takes a bit longer. But PTSD symptoms don't have to last a lifetime. People can get back to leading the lives they want to very quickly.
Okay, so that's a little bit on that. I was going to say something, but I forgot. I forgot what I was going to say. You ever have that moment? I should have stopped the video. I was thinking about it. What was she talking about? I'm just looking through it here. Okay, right here. Right here. So information. So by going through information as a JW, exJW coming out of the religion, I found it was vital that I reevaluated all of this information that I held sacred in my mind. I had to reevaluate it all. I had to overwrite a whole bunch of it. And the only way to do that is, well, you can do a personal therapy, or you can go see a psychiatrist, and they'll walk. They all use different therapies. They're all good at different therapies. Okay, the next one is EMDR. This is like a pendulum. Like the hypnotizing. I didn't realize it's called eye movement. This is moving your eyes a specific way while you process traumatic memories. So it's about your eye movement. You can't move your head. You move your eyes. So with kind of a pendulum or whatever they use. So we're going to look at this. If you have a condition you were born with or was passed down through your family, you're dealing with complications from brain injury, EMDR may not be appropriate. So like if it's passed down. So EMDR therapy has evolved beyond its initial focus on trauma events with its versatile and adaptive nature. So what is it? As early as possible within the first few days following the event. So they recommend that you use this therapy right away. So let's say you were in an accident and it was traumatic. You'd want to use this therapy right away. Yeah, okay, well, let's look at this. Let's see what it's all about. And this, how long is this? No? Um, "12 minutes." See?
And memories of trauma tend to get compartmentalized. 30 to 40% of people experience a traumatic event in their lifetime, and memories of trauma tend to get compartmentalized in the brain. As a neuropsychologist, Dr. Judy Ho specializes in the relationship between the physical brain and behavior. In this series, she walks through a groundbreaking type of therapy that allows patients to rewire their brains, process their emotions, repair those memories, and ultimately get their lives back on track. Dr. Judy, welcome back to Med Circle.
So good to see you, as always,
You
Kyle.
too, yes. Today we're talking about EMDR therapy. What is that?
EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. I know, it's a mouthful, but it's a really, really cool approach. It is based in adaptive information processing theory that is posited by Francine Shapiro. back in the 1980s. And the idea is that trauma and trauma experiences can produce certain memories that are very distressing for the individual. And at the time that the trauma occurs, the individual did not fully process that particular memory that is associated with the trauma. And that causes difficulty in the future, that as the individual grows up, as the individual goes about life, they have certain negative beliefs and thoughts and physical sensations that are associated with the trauma that get triggered sometimes by certain events or even other memories that come up. And until those memories are adequately and fully processed, a person cannot function at their best. And EMDR is all about resolving those problematic memories, processing them fully, and bringing the individual into a future that has a lot more positivity in terms of their skill sets and their belief systems about how they go about life.
So what does it mean to fully process a memory?
So the theory behind EMDR is that oftentimes it's a protective mechanism. When trauma happens to us, we almost block some parts of it out.
Yes.
Because our mind is not equipped to handle the types of traumas that can occur to an individual. And so to protect your mind from being completely fractured, it blocks out some of it. But it still happened to you, so that part of the memory is still stored somewhere.
Right.
It's either stored in your belief system, or it's stored in your body somewhere, or it's stored in both. And until you actually fully process it, it's going to come up and it's going to provoke you and trigger you in situations that sometimes you don't even expect.
Yes.
And so it's really about gaining full control again of like how you cope with future distressing situations.
The first time I heard of EMDR was in a series on PTSD with Dr. Cheryl Arrett. Is this only used to treat PTSD?
So generally, what we find in research is that it's been efficacious for PTSD. It's also not appropriate for everybody who has PTSD, but certainly that's the most common way that EMDR is utilized. I have found that EMDR has increasingly been utilized for what we call micro traumas. So maybe they're not things that produce a PTSD diagnosis, but they are things that still trigger a traumatic reaction. So this might be somebody who doesn't get that PTSD diagnosis, but maybe they get an acute distress disorder diagnosis, or they don't qualify for a diagnosis, but they just have certain reactions like a hypervigilance or a really negative mood state that gets triggered by certain memories that would seem that they might respond to something like EMDR.
Right. Now, this is different than somatic experiencing, correct?
Yeah, so somatic experiencing also is oftentimes utilized in trauma, and somatic experiencing focuses on the body sensations a lot, but their theories are slightly different. So EMDR is really about processing the memory that hasn't been adequately processed, whereas somatic experiencing really just focuses on the body sensations that you don't even have to necessarily even talk about the trauma to any detail, but just recall the body sensations that come up that make you feel distressed and make it harder for you to function.
Now, big question. This is what the whole series is basically about, but how does EMDR work?
So EMDR works by trying to focus on 3 different components that are really related to somebody who is struggling with PTSD. And the first component is the past memories where the trauma first occurred and dealing with that. The second piece is dealing with the present distress that unprocessed trauma is causing. So that individual might say, I'm having difficulties in relationships, I'm having problems with activities of daily functioning. So really identifying that and addressing that. And the last piece is developing more positive coping strategies and beliefs for the future. What do you need for a healthy future? And establishing that through the treatment. The treatment is a treatment that is generally short-lived, meaning that it's not supposed to go on forever and ever. For most people, they see benefits from as little from 3 sessions to maybe 20. But I think the average course of EMDR is somewhere between 12 to 16. And it is thought that this learning process, this learning of a more adaptive way to live, positive coping strategies and positive beliefs about the self is enhanced by bilateral stimulation. But there's something about this dual attention task where you're focusing on either a visual, an auditory, or a tactile stimuli that is bilateral. So it could be sounds coming into earphones bilaterally. It can be tapping of the therapist's hands. It could be you squeezing a device, going back and forth between your left and your right hand, but that you're doing this while you're trying to process the pieces of the trauma that were locked up or that were somehow lost somehow in your conscious mind. And that is supposed to enhance your processing of this trauma and then move on to that whole positive coping strategies phase.
Now, this sounds very woo-woo, almost like
yes,
there's no way this works.
Yeah.
But this is evidence-based.
Yes.
Okay.
It's evidence-based. And I think what people maybe would find helpful about this whole idea of bilateral stimulation and why it could help is because it sort of puts you in almost like a hypnosis state for some people. It relaxes their conscious mind enough so they can go deeper into a more subconscious state of mind, maybe even a more relaxed state of mind where they can then safely bring up parts of the trauma memory. And so if you think about what you do in mindfulness activities or meditation, a lot of times people utilize other types of stimuli, other sensory stimuli to try to get them into a calmer place, into a more relaxed place. I think that's one way you can think of the bilateral stimulation, because when you're doing this, it becomes kind of rhythmic and you sort of just fall into it. And then you become a little bit more suggestible to dealing with things that are maybe in your subconscious mind, because your conscious mind is distracted. It's distracted and less guarded maybe. And that's what you need to get to the deeper level of processing that EMDR requires.
Now, I haven't heard anything about with my eyes though.
Oh, yes. And so, yes, the bilateral stimuli of like moving a device in front of your eyes is the original way that they encourage that bilateral stimulation. So it could be anything. It could be a pen. It could be, you know, those old timey watches that I think you kind of see in movies maybe, or when you think about EMDR, you think that's what it is. But that's what I was mentioning about sort of this hypnotic state that you kind of get into. If you do that for a minute, you start to get into an interesting state where in studies, they found that physiologically things slow down.
Wow.
The heart rate slows and you sort of drop sometimes even a tiny bit in your basal temperature. So you get into, again, that parasympathetic nervous system.
To be free and flexible and creative was really essential to what I wanted to make. And I didn't find a platform that did that.
And I think that's important, right? Because you're about to bring up traumatic memories. So you can't be in your fight or flight already, because one, you'll probably never get to the memory, because again, your coping strategy is to block it out. And two, you're too amped up to be able to process that memory in a way that's going to move you forward in a healthy way. And so it's a way to get you to settle down into your parasympathetic nervous system where you relax, you digest, you slow down. And I think that that's really the key of why bilateral stimulation is theorized to help with the learning process.
Got it. Okay. So can you do this by yourself, or do you need to do it with a therapist?
Yeah, you need to do it with a therapist. The EMDR therapist does teach you coping strategies in between. And these are very common to other forms of therapy as well. You know, things like breathing exercises, visualization, mindfulness techniques to help bridge the times in which you start to get that distressful feeling, especially when you're in between sessions, because now you're starting to process pieces of this undiscovered memory or unprocessed memory. And what if something comes up in between your sessions? You're going to get very amped up and you're going to feel scared and anxious. And so the therapist does teach you these types of techniques to bridge those times when you're not working with them actively. So it's really good because it kind of gives you at least those momentary breaks from that distress and you see your therapist again.
Who would you say EMDR is perfect for?
EMDR is perfect for people who have the awareness.
Okay. We just kind of skipped the ending, but that kind of gives you the gist of it. It's kind of like you have to go to a therapist to take this. It relaxes you. And she goes on to talk about, you know, when you talk about the tip of the iceberg, in our everyday conscious life, that's all we see is the tip of the iceberg, the tip. But below the water is this whole, okay, so the tip is up here, but the water's here. Maybe the water's on my map there. The tip is up here. Well, below it is all of this big ice chunk below the water, and that's our subconscious. It's below the ice. So people consciously, we're just the tip of the iceberg. Subconsciously, we can't access that without help. I don't think we can. If you can, let me know. Okay, I think we're at the end of our program. That's it. I hope you learned something with me. Like I say, realized that I was having these these post-traumatic stress moments all along. And here's what helped me is recognizing it. And I thought, okay, this is a PTSD moment, isn't it, Vern? You know what? I'm just I went for a walk and I thought, this has to be a PTSD moment, Vern. So I came back and my wife and I went for a walk, came back, we talked, and sure enough, it was a PTSD moment. And it was a moment, right? So you can get into them and get out of them quick if you recognize it. And I found recognizing it helped me, and even reflecting a bit and then coming back and you got to use logic from the present to say this isn't the past, and then it gets us out of that moment. At least it did for me. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks for being on with us. Keith Silver was on with us. Jennifer, Jay, you guys all had a lot to say. So put your smile on, and we'll see you on Discord tonight for a game of poker.
And thank you to the moderators for covering this shift for me. I appreciate it, guys.
That's my good wife. So thanks again, everyone. Okay, so what do we want to give you for an outro?
I was going to open up the air.
Yeah, I'm going to just play this. What do I have here? Something. I thought I had something.
Give the people something fun.
I thought I had something. Well, here it is. Here's what I'm going to give you. I haven't played this for a while. It's a dancing couple, country music. Here it is. Till next time, keep living your life with love. That always works. It helps a lot. Hugs. Remember one of the videos? Love. Love is one of the biggest things that will help PTSD. Come on to the community, Discord. Come on, everyone. If you're out there and you haven't yet joined the channel, subscribe. This channel is about love. All the people on this community are very loving. So thanks, everyone, for everything, and keep living your day with love. Bye for now. It won't play. I got a glitch. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining the show today, and we hope to see you next time on JW Night Talk. But until next time, come for a ride with me. I'm going to put on my special goggles, and I'm going to need this parachute. So now we're all set to go, and I think we need a little music. So hit her, guys. Little night talk here. Here we go. Hey, look, my ride's there. Okay, my ride's here, so here I go. Woo! These are Nike Air, and they give me more lift when I'm skydiving because they are Nike Air.